All right, just checking the sound real quick here. Can you hear me, Kaylee?
I can hear you.
Perfect, and I hear you perfectly also. Thank you.
Perfect. Hi, Kimberly. This is Amy. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, you sound great. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Andy speaking for sound test.
Sounds good, Andy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Miss Amy, let's do a sound check.
Hi, Kimberly. Can you hear me okay?
You sound great.
Great, thanks.
And whenever you're ready, we can do a sound check for Councilmember Rogers. So we've got a couple of our consultants here. I'm going to send a prompt to go ahead and allow you to unmute. And when you receive that prompt, go ahead and test your sound. First, we have Andrea Howard.
Hi, everyone. This is Andrea.
Sounds great. Thank you. And we also have Tammy Seal.
Good afternoon. This is Tammy Seal.
Sounds great. Thank you. And then we have, looks like we have Vice Mayor Rogers. Sound check. All right. If I want to do a sound check for Councilmember Alvarez, please. All right. I want to see if we can get a sound check from Vice Mayor Rogers and Councilmember Alvarez. All right, if we can get sound checks from Mayor Rogers, Vice Mayor Rogers, and Councilmember Alvarez.
Present.
I'm present as well, though my audio seems to be very low.
Well, we can hear you just fine, Eddie. So we'll go ahead and
Okay,
get
perfect.
started. We'll call to order. Madam Clerk, do you want to call the roll?
Mayor Rogers,
Here.
Vice Mayor Rogers,
Present.
and Councilmember Alvarez.
Also present.
Great. So we definitely have a quorum. We have all of our members here today. As most folks have gotten used to over the last year and a half, this is now a Zoom format. That means that folks will have the ability to participate via Zoom. When it comes time on each of the items, we'll ask folks to hit the raise hand feature, and then they'll be called on and given 3 minutes to talk on the items. We will not tolerate any disrespect to staff or any obscenities or any type of inappropriate behavior, and folks will be asked to leave the Zoom or will be removed should they cross any boundaries. We'll start today with our approval of the minutes. We have March 10th, April 21st, and May 12th of the minutes. Vice Mayor or Council Member, did either of you have any amendments on today's minutes?
No, I don't, Mayor.
Okay. We'll go ahead and open it up for public comment on our item 3, our minutes, to see if there's any changes or amendments that folks were going to request on those minutes. Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the committee, and barring any opposition, we will show those as adopted. And I'm seeing no opposition to it. Great, we'll go on to item number 4, and that's public comment for non-agenda matters. These are things that are not on today's council or today's subcommittee agenda that folks would like to air. Again, because it has not been on the agenda, council members can't get into a back and forth for discussion, but it does give us a chance to really have a conversation about future agenda items, or to bring forward concerns or questions that you have that we can get staff to address. So I'm seeing a couple of hands pop up right off the bat. We'll start with Eris, followed by Kevin.
Sorry, here I was talking away and I wasn't even unmuted yet.
It's all good, Eris. You just got to practice what you were going to say.
That's true. That's true. I'm Eris Weaver with the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition. Addressing the climate crisis is a very big thing, but it has to be implemented in small individual actions and projects. And I want to share with you my frustration about a small project fairly recently that got some slightly derailed. As an example of what happens as things move up and down the different food chains, and the frustration of knowing how to make sure that the lofty goals and plans that committees such as yourself or the city general plan or the bike ped plan or all of these plans actually gets implemented. So the plan for Ridgeway, for redoing bicycle lanes and parking and restriping that street, was that the most important street in the city to get a redo? Maybe not, but the opportunity was there because of repaving to get restriped. And the plan that was originally proposed was very good. It would especially tie into things when the 101 overpass is put in. But because there was a hue and cry from some neighbors, because nobody ever wants to lose parking, that design got changed. It's still better than what was there before, but it is not as good as it could be. Two of the things that get in the way of implementing these plans, when we have good research to know what is going to actually move the needle and get people out of their cars and change their behavior, is the two things that work against us are, again, the sort of public input about yes, we want to, get rid of climate change, but don't make me not be able to park my car exactly where I want it. And the other is culture within transportation and public works departments everywhere, that people doing that work are used to planning for cars. So here was something very small, it's a small street, but add that up all the way across the city with the kinds of actions we need to be taking. And I'm very frustrated because I don't know who it was who got to make that ultimate decision to shift that project. Anyway, I think I could carry on, but I only have a few seconds left, so I should probably just stop right there. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Eris. I'm happy to circle back with you on that issue as well. Let's go to Kevin, followed by Steve.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, go for it.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm checking in to just say how disappointed I am with the Climate Action Subcommittee and the city's response in general to the crisis that we're in. We're in the middle right now of a climate catastrophe. There are climate refugees in Louisiana slogging around in dirty, flooded streets looking for some place to live. Pregnant women sitting in the sweltering heat with no place to cool off. Children scared out of their wits, feeling unsafe because they sense the fear in their parents. Thousands without power. Extreme record-breaking heat, devastating fires, drought, floods, 100-year hurricanes, all happening in the grip of a worldwide pandemic. And the Climate Action Subcommittee canceled 3 consecutive meetings because there was nothing on the agenda, nothing to discuss. The staff's presentation, which I read, addressing climate change in the general plan, is too weak for words. After reading it, a friend said, it's like being in a burning house and deciding that the best action to take is to research fire extinguishers. We're living in a world that is collapsing, and we all have PTSD, which is present traumatic stress disorder. Why it is that we're not devoting every waking moment to this crisis is astonishing. We don't get it that every standard municipal process is grossly inadequate, and we can't continue to move at the speed of government and with a straight face try to appear as if we're doing anything close to what needs to be done. We need leadership that is completely unfamiliar now. Section 3 of our city charter says that our elected officials can pass laws and ordinances that supersede state regulations if the safety of our citizen demands it. It reads, quote, in part, the city by and through its council and other officials shall have and may exercise all powers necessary or appropriate to a municipal corporation and the general welfare of its inhabitants, which are not prohibited by the Constitution. If ever there was or ever will be a time for our elected officials to act on those words, it's now. What crisis can you think of for those words to be more appropriate than the crisis we're in right now? Somebody or some group has to step up and get this process started. Be the frog that jumps out of the boiling water and finds a way to turn the burner off. I know this sounds dramatic and alarmist, but we all know it's true. You know it's true. So be bold, be brave, get out on a limb and lead. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Go to Steve.
Now I've learned to unmute. Yes, this is Steve Bertelbaugh with the Transportation Land Use Coalition. The problem with the climate change issue is that it touches every single act that we make, including where we put our waste, whether in the green can, the blue can, or the gray can. And it affects every single department. So trying to deal with it is like trying to connect with all parts of the elephant at one time. An example, the Transportation Authority, the County Transportation Authority, is going to be looking at its plan for 2050. We know that climate change has to be dealt with long before 2050. It has to be dealt with by 2030. But they're focused on a plan that's got a deadline in 2050, and it's very difficult for them to say nothing in this plan prevents us from meeting the 2030 date that the RCPA is focused on. I suggest that what we do is back plan from 2030. How do we become carbon neutral by 2030? And that will set the schedule for when we need to do each of the steps that are coming. The planning process that's been promoted is just going to delay any efforts to accomplish things. And most of the things that need to be accomplished are already common sense and don't need a whole lot of planning. So my effort is to get us to take this very seriously, figure out what needs to be done in the order that they need to be done, and get every department in the city on board to just do it. Thank you. Thank you for your efforts. Look forward to faster progress between now and the end of the year.
Great. Thank you, Steve. I don't see any other hands for public comment for non-agenda items, so I'll go ahead and bring it back to the committee. Let's go ahead and move on to the main event for today. That's item 5.1. It's our climate action plan update. I'll turn it over to Amy Lyle, our supervising planner.
Good afternoon. Let me share my screen real quick. All right, just confirming you can see that presentation and I'm in the right presentation mode.
Yep.
Excellent. All right, well, good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council Member. Thank you for having us. This item today is related to the work we've been doing on the climate action plan itself. But just wanted to start off by saying we've got some folks on the call today. So I am privileged to be able to supervise our advanced planning team and get to work on the general plan as part of that. We also have Andy Gustafson on the call, who's our project manager for the general plan. And then we also have Andrea and Tammy from PlaceWorks, who is our consultant team working specifically on the climate action plan. So they'll be helping with this presentation today as well. But just wanted to note that we have been underway on our general plan update, and all three of you have been a part of those efforts thus far. And that effort is pretty large. So we are doing a comprehensive update, which includes land use, transportation. We do have a special focus on updates related to our safety element, to environmental justice, and housing element. And the climate action plan update is folded into this process. So we did do a contract amendment to add that piece into our general plan. And we want to provide a very focused discussion around the climate action plan itself with your subcommittee, not just today, but on an ongoing basis. So you'll see during this presentation, we'll have different touch points and opportunities to talk about specific policy areas or issues, and then just give regular updates on the process as we go forward. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Tammy and have her talk a little bit about what's in the actual scope of work and what we'll be doing moving forward.
Great. Thank you, Amy. Is my sound coming through okay, everyone?
Yes.
All right, thanks. Good afternoon. So we've got just a couple slides here to go over the highlights of our approach and our scope of work, and we'll be really happy to answer your questions after we go over these slides. So as as Amy's mentioned, our approach as part of the general plan update is to integrate and do what we call mainstream climate action, to pull forward climate mitigation and adaptation policies and strategies into the general plan. We think this approach is consistent with the city's overall goals for the future, and puts climate action kind of on equal footing and weighting as other key topics to be addressed in the general plan. So it provides the overarching framework. It integrates climate change mitigation and adaptation into the decisions that are being made about land use, transportation, energy use, other resource use, safety and resilience, and justice and equity. So since this was a very timely update to the general plan and a great opportunity to pull forward that climate action plan update into the general plan process, it ensures that we have a comprehensive strategy for the city that addresses community-wide issues as well as city operations. So we're doing all the same steps that we would normally do in a climate action plan. We're just doing them integrated into the general plan update process. So at the end of this, we'll have updated greenhouse gas emissions inventories, updated GHG reduction targets, goals, policies, and implementation programs to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, goals, policies, and programs to ensure climate adaptation and resilience across the community, and to think forward to 2050, but with an interim point of 2030 as well, recognizing the urgency of the issue. So we are obligated to meet all state requirements related to greenhouse gas emissions reduction and climate adaptation. And we think it's incredibly important to leverage the regional work that's been going on. And I want to note that while we're doing this work to update the climate action plan, it doesn't preclude ongoing implementation of the city's climate action plan and other climate action commitments. We anticipate that work to implement and to continue to reduce emissions and increase resilience will continue. And we'll be able to note the benefit of that work when we start doing what we call the quantification next year. So while we're updating and freshening policies, we certainly expect that the city maintains its commitment to reducing emissions towards its current adopted targets for 2035. So, we are familiar with the 2012 Climate Action Plan. I had the opportunity with my previous firm to be part of the team that worked with the city on the Climate Action Plan. So it's a real privilege to be able to participate in this update and take a look at that plan, and to see that many of the topics addressed in the 2012 Climate Action Plan are still relevant. We just need to update them and ensure that they're future ready. We recognize there's been significant changes across the state and the region, and even in the city on climate action. We want to ensure that the updated general plan reflects the existing activities, the city's successes, and that we're also aware of challenges that have come up with implementation of a climate action plan. And a new part of the work that we're doing now is also on the adaptation side. Consistent with state guidance, we've prepared a climate change vulnerability assessment, and we'll ensure that that informs the general plan's goals, policies, and implementation strategies related to climate adaptation and resilience. So this is a big bundle of work ahead of us. It's an exciting time to be doing the work. The state continues to provide good resources and guidance to us. And we have, as we mentioned, excellent resources from the Regional Climate Protection Authority to inform the work. And I just want to kind of restate that by taking this approach of integrating climate action into the general plan, this is an integrated, mainstreamed approach. It doesn't treat climate action as an in addition to work. It's just as equally important as all of the other land use, transportation, and decisions and topics that'll be in the general plan. So we think that this provides a really good foundation for the city going forward, and is responsive to what we've heard from council and the community related to the general plan update. So I think we can go to the next slide just to go over the schedule. So the schedule is aligned with the general plan update, or the Santa Rosa Forward schedule, which does extend out through spring of 2023. And the work that we need to do the greenhouse gas emissions inventory is dependent on some of the early work of the Santa Rosa Forward project. So right now we're anticipating updating the city's past greenhouse gas emissions inventories and preparing a current year inventory and updating all the forecasts. So they're very important quantitative foundational work we need to do. We're going to do that in the spring of 2022, be able to bring that back to the group and use that to inform discussion and selection of GHG reduction targets, and to confirm what we call the breadth of the approach, or the topics that we anticipate covering in the general plan update. We'll work with the council and the community and staff to develop the strategies to reduce the emissions we identify in the inventories and the forecast, and to address the vulnerabilities that have come through in the vulnerability assessment. So we anticipate that strategy work, the policy work, will be done in spring and summer of next year, which will then, this is all work that'll be subject to review consistent with the California Environmental Quality Act, and that work will be done in the winter of 2023. So we do have to follow the guidance. The California Environmental Quality Act does guide the work that we're doing. And one of our objectives with this approach is to ensure that the general plan and this update can serve as what we call a qualified GHG reduction strategy that provides benefits to future projects that are subject to discretionary review in CEQA, and ensures that the climate action policies are carried through into all new development, and that all potential impacts are considered, evaluated, and addressed in the Santa Rosa Forward project. So I think that covers our keynotes, and we wanted to lay out the schedule now so that you all could have a sense of what topics would be coming back to you and when, and to also let us know if this seems appropriate as what you expect, or if you have other questions for us.
Thank you, Tammy. And I'll just note that I just see a mistake on our slide that the environmental analysis would be winter 2023, but that's actually 2022. So
okay.
the project itself will conclude early 2023. So that environmental review will be winter 2022. Correct, Tammy?
Right. It would follow, end of next year. Yeah. Sorry, sorry about that, but
no problem.
So 2022 is going to be a busy year for sure.
Yeah. But I will say through this process and through the various components where we have public input built in, we will want to come back to the subcommittee to talk through specific issues related to climate action, and to give you all an opportunity to weigh in as these work products and policies start to get fleshed out. So we're at an exciting point. So with that, we're happy to answer questions or elaborate on anything that you've heard today.
Council members, I'll start with you. Vice Mayor or Councilmember Alvarez, do either of you have any questions? Looks like no from the Vice Mayor.
For myself, Mayor, it's not a question. If anything, just commending the city on the work that they're doing. And you have to excuse me for not having my image up. It seems to work better without it. But nonetheless, I just want to commend the city, especially after taking a tour yesterday with the Public Works Department and seeing that they are putting in place different strategies, whether it's the electric bus to different forms, whether it be the road repair, that we're becoming much more efficient and really looking after not only the efficiency, but the effectiveness of the repairs that we're doing, so we can create better transit through vehicle usage and such. So really want to commend the different staff in different departments. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Councilmember. So, Amy, I think one of the things that we're likely to hear from the public, and I think that it's a valid and a good question, is if the city has a genuine goal of getting to carbon neutral by 2030, why does the general plan have target reductions that go out as far as 2050? And can you address that question?
Yes, and I might ask Tammy to help me with that one. But first of all, I will say that and just as Tammy said, we do have in our existing climate action plan and existing municipal climate action plan, and those are still in effect and being implemented through various other programs and policies throughout the city. So this is a refresh. So we are looking at moving forward from existing baseline. So there's going to be a couple of different approaches. Our general plan itself has a 2050 horizon. So we are looking at population projections up to that point, growth projections up to that point, and all of our policy discussions are looking at that as a horizon year. But we are going to be doing inventory work and projections related to climate action plan based on the policy goals that you have already adopted at a city council that are different than that 2050 horizon year. So Tammy, did you want to talk further about those different years and different thresholds?
Sure. And this is always a little, I guess, hopefully I can provide the clarity here, but I know it's always a little challenging. So what's really important is that we sync with the general plan horizon year, which is 2050. That's also one of the state's horizon years. So we always recommend looking out to 2050 because we don't want to stop through emissions reductions. So we want to ensure that even with the 2030 target, that there's a clear plan in place to ensure that those emissions continue to, they either stay at carbon neutral, they continue to decline, or wherever we're at that point. So we are obligated, and it's good best practice to ensure there's a continued path to 2050. So with the carbon neutral goal for 2030, that's really very clear in the climate emergency resolution. And as part of the work, we are going to do what we call the quantification, the math of how we get there. So as Amy said, we start with what's already been approved, and we have to then look at where there might be gaps to get to that carbon neutral target and recommend additional policy strategies or work programs to get there. So that's like what we see as a big focus of the work in spring and summer of next year after we do these inventory updates. So I do anticipate that we're going to show a path to 2030 and a path to 2050.
Okay. I appreciate that, Tammy, and that is fairly clear to me. San Francisco has a document that I think you're very familiar with that has been very instructive that went through and I think does a lot of what you're talking about, the quantification, where it says, in order to meet its carbon reduction footprints, this percentage of individuals needs to be shifted out of single occupancy vehicles and onto a bike or onto pedestrian. It'd be very helpful for our community to see that for what it's actually going to take for us to hit carbon neutral by 2030. And then within the plan, my expectation is if we're going to be carbon neutral, that's the goal, that then future developments from that point forward from 2030 would need to be carbon neutral themselves, right? And how do we look at things through that lens? And so is that going to be accounted for in the analysis that you're doing and the plan that you are putting forward for the general plan section?
I'd say yes. So while we're integrating the climate action policies, the goals, policies, and programs into the general plan for consistency and completeness, I think we are anticipating that there will be what we call the GHG reduction program, or a pull. It'll be perhaps an appendix to the general plan or a pullout that makes it very clear that the path and what's along the path along the way, and the participation or performance assumptions of each strategy, and they'll be quantified to 2030 and 2050. So as part of that, we do get at what you're talking about. We're going to look at estimate number of cars that'll transition to electric. How many people, the mode share splits that we can look at, reducing single occupancy use, increasing transit, increasing bike ridership. And that's why this is a good opportunity, working with the general plan, to sync up those goals and targets that are also going to come out of those elements of the general plan. So yes, it would be reasonable to expect that all new development would be carbon neutral. That's consistent with the state's goals right now. I can tell you that our challenge will be the existing built environment, those buildings in particular that are built before 1980.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I appreciate that. Council members, any other questions before I go to public comment?
Mayor Rogers, if I may, I just wanted to note that someone asked a question in the chat related to RCPA's inventory that they just published recently. And I'll just note that we have been working closely with RCPA. And although we will be doing a new inventory as part of the general plan update, we will be utilizing the research and the findings that RCPA has done as well. So we're looking to just build upon what they have already done to get even more specific within our city limits. But we do work closely with them, and we'll continue to.
Great, I appreciate that. Let's go ahead and go to public comment. If you're interested in providing comment, go ahead and hit the raise hand feature on your Zoom. We'll start with Abigail, followed by Jenny.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, looks like we're on Jenny. So we'll go Jenny, and then we'll see if Abigail puts hands back up for us to call on.
Okay, thank you. So this is Jenny Blaker. I'm co-coordinator of the Coalition Opposing New Gas Stations, CONGAS. We had been expecting that the Climate Action Subcommittee would be bringing forward today wording for a draft ordinance prohibiting new gas stations in the city of Santa Rosa to be forwarded to the City Council. I'm extremely disappointed that this isn't happening and hasn't even been mentioned yet. We have been in discussions with the mayor since April 2020, when we provided some policy points at his suggestion, and we've been in discussion at several of these Climate Action Subcommittee meetings. We were urged by the mayor to take our policy points to the Climate Action Subcommittee first, so that they would then be presented by the City Council. So I'm surprised and disappointed to see this is not on the agenda. We would urge you to do whatever you can now to move this forward. It seems to be low-hanging fruit. No more new gas station infrastructure in the city of Santa Rosa. There are already plenty of gas stations. Not only is it a climate issue, an environmental justice issue, but as we've been through, there are plenty of gas stations. They cause leaks. There are underground leaking storage tanks all over the place. And what we're trying to do is reduce dependency on fossil fuels into the future. Nothing about existing gas stations. Petaluma did this. They passed a prohibition, no new gas stations, and there was no pushback. We're really wondering what is happening. We've been told since April 22, bring this to the Climate Action Subcommittee and we will help you get it to the City Council. We were told it would come up in March, then May, then now, and it's just poof, disappeared. What's happening? Why? We're also concerned because gas stations are increasingly not little mom and pop businesses anymore, but huge corporations like Safeway and Costco moving in to create new gas stations with so-called cheaper gas to attract membership. And just as Safeway in Petaluma is in the courts right now. There's a similar court case going on, a sequel lawsuit in Novato, where Costco was trying to bring in a lawsuit, bring in a gas station. I hope nothing like this is going to happen in Sonoma County, but the sooner that we could get a gas station prohibition ordinance passed, then the sooner we could just be done with that. I don't understand why it's so difficult, or why we've been told that this will be taking place, that an ordinance will be brought back, and it's not happening. So if you can give us any explanation of the status of the gas station ordinance proposal, that would be very welcome. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jenny. And we'll circle back with staff after public comment on this item, item number 5. Abigail, did you still want to speak? If so, we'll go to you right now, and then we'll come back to Eris after. Are we able to get Abigail? Oh, okay, Abigail says, I'm fine. Eris, followed by Alexa. Looks like we've lost Eris. So let's go to Alexa, and then we'll go to Woody.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, there you go.
Thanks. Hello, Mayor Rogers, Vice Mayor Rogers, and Councilmember Alvarez. Also, thank you, Amy and Tammy, for the clear presentation. And Amy, thank you for the correction. My blood pressure points went down some when you moved that year to 2022 instead of 2023. And I prepared this comment before that. So please keep that in mind as I make it. I am, as someone who was very relieved to see the 2030 carbon neutrality as like the most important part of our climate emergency resolution, or a key defining feature of it, I was very disappointed with this so-called climate action plan. And I understand now the context of trying to sync it up with the general plan, and that makes sense. But I want to address the particular language of including a comprehensive strategy to reduce municipal and community emission sources through 2050, setting reduction targets for 2030 and 2050. I actually think that that language reneges on the climate emergency resolution and sounds a lot like kicking the can down the road. As Mayor Rogers, you predicted the public would react this way. But carbon sequestration options simply do not exist at scale to handle anything but our most essential greenhouse gas emissions, like the fuel in the airplanes that we use to fight fires, which means that we already know that in order to reach carbon neutrality, our greenhouse gas emissions reductions targets for 2030 should be in the 95 to 100% range. So I just don't want to see us waste any more time in investigating what that number should be. I feel like the city's staff people, as the stewards of our city, should be working feverishly between now and 2030 to create a Santa Rosa where citizens can flourish in spite of and because of 95 to 100% greenhouse gas reductions. If we treat these reductions as negotiable, as something that needs further study and years of review, we are wasting precious time and dooming us to failure. So for all the people I love, for all the people you love, and for the city we all call home, I am imploring this subcommittee, the staff, and the city to do better. I would ask the subcommittee to direct the staff to set emissions reductions requirements for 2030 at least 95%, and so that we can spend our valuable and limited time figuring out how to make that transition as painless and prosperous as possible for all of us Santa Rosans. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexa. Let's go ahead and go back to Eris. It looks like Eris got dropped and is back. Eris, you with us?
Okay, I'm unmuted. I'm just waiting for my timer. So two things. The first is just an image that came to me as looking through the slides with all these words that to me just don't seem to say very much, is that, you know, there's a patient laying on the floor gasping for their last breath, and we're talking about 2 years worth of tests and things to figure out what to do, and all I want to do is get my hands on them and start doing CPR. That said, I've also been sitting here scanning through the 2012 climate action plan. And again, because I'm an action-oriented person, I've gone directly to the implementation and monitoring section of it. And what strikes me is something that I've seen in all the nonprofits that I've worked for is it's easy to make a plan with all these things. And then if you don't include in the plan who's going to do what, and have regular checkups, report cards to see how you're doing, then where does it go? And so I'm wondering who is in charge of monitoring the last action plan. I don't think I remember seeing any report card of, you know, have we achieved any of the intermediate goals? I know bike related wise, we haven't. Nor do I see clearly, other than staff will monitor implementation. If there's not a specific person or department or role or committee that is charged with implementing a specific thing or monitoring a specific thing, it tends to not get done. So I would very much like to see any action plan include the things I will put in my action plans and strategic plans, which is not the lofty goal, but who is going to actually do what piece and when are we going to look at the results? And I would like to ask, has there been any report card along the way of what targets have we met and which of the activities have we implemented? That was, you know, the several pages worth of tiny type of actions that were listed in that previous plan. Thanks.
Thank you, Eris. We'll go to Woody and then to Steve.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Woody.
Good afternoon, Mayor and committee members. Woody Hastings with co-coordinator with the Coalition Opposing New Gas Stations, along with Jenny Blaker. I think Jenny really said it pretty well. I don't know that I have much of substance to add. I would just say that we would like to hear what the plans are. I was disconcerted to receive an email from staff saying that this issue of prohibiting new gas stations in Santa Rosa has been placed on some kind of low priority, and that it may not come back for consideration until sometime around March next year. And as Jenny said, we don't understand why this couldn't be, being somewhat of a low-hanging fruit, sort of in the category of, if you're in a hole, stop digging. Great that you've got a climate action plan to do proactive things, but this is, stop doing things that are making the situation even worse. And so, so this is something that we see that the city council could do fairly expeditiously. And yes, the RCPA is going to be hearing the item on Monday at their meeting with guidance to all the cities in Sonoma County to cease accepting new applications for and processing applications for new gas stations. So, I would like to urge that you not cancel your next meeting, bring this issue back with, directing staff to put together whatever steps it is, either a draft ordinance or the revisions to the code, whatever it is that needs to happen, with a report for what the next steps are. And I understand it needs to go to the Planning Commission before it goes to the City Council, but whatever it is, we want to keep the ball rolling on this. And I think past comments, supportive comments from you, Mr. Mayor, and council members have been very supportive and sort of like, yes, we want to do this. So I'd like to see that come to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you, Woody. We'll go to Steve, followed by Tom and Chris.
Yes, thank you. This is Steve Bertlebow again with the Transportation Land Use Coalition. Just a quick word on the process of making streets safe for cyclists and for pedestrians. If we're going to make a shift from driving to cycling and walking, the first thing that needs to happen is we need to have safe streets. And the second thing that needs to happen is we need to have places within walking distance where people can shop. Our tendency to have strip malls that are accessible mainly by car has got to be reversed, and I think can be done fairly quickly. Simply allowing people to convert their living room to a bodega where people can come and get groceries and so forth could very easily do away with many of the food deserts. Corner grocery stores are fine, but they're going to take a little while. But I think we need to think outside the box in terms of really making every part of the city a 15-minute city for those that walk as well as for those that bicycle. I've been talking to people from Utah who think that there's good models there for what you can do in order to speed up the process. And of course, we can look at places like Apeldoorn in the Netherlands, or places in Spain where every 9-block super block is 15-mile-an-hour territory for automobiles. So those are the kinds of things we need to think about that will take relatively little change in the infrastructure, but really reduce our need to drive. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Steve. Go to Tom and Chris, followed by Michael.
Hello, I'm Tom Amato. I'm the chair of the Oakmont Democratic Club. My comments will be fairly brief. First, I would like to compliment and recognize that both the current council and actually previous council members, as well as city staff, I think have taken the climate crisis seriously and have really tried to integrate it with a lot of the work. In particular, I'd recognize, the city's effort about a year ago to go all electric. And part of where that was important was the beginning to dismantle or not allow the expansion of basically the petroleum industry and the use of greenhouse gases in the new neighborhoods. I'm going to mix two metaphors, hopefully to confuse everybody. As somebody who is very inept at chewing gum and walking at the same time, I hope you as a council are very able to walk and chew gum at the same time. In some ways, what I see happening with the overall city plan, climate plan, is developing a beautiful fruit tree. And it's going to take some years to do that, and it's really great. But I think it's really important, as that beautiful tree is developed and designed with your plan, that if some of the fruit on that tree gets ripe, that you pick it. And I'm also kind of baffled that the conversation around no new gas stations is not moving faster with the city. It seems to me that's low-hanging fruit. Not going to take a lot of staff time, I wouldn't believe, or council time, particularly since Petaluma has already led on this issue. You should be able to mostly copy what they've done. So again, I am frustrated that you've not been able to move that part of the agenda forward. Again, I think that's low fruit, and I think we need a good fruit salad at this point. So again, thank you for your time. And
there's still a little time left. This is Chris Thompson, and I'm the co-chair, the vice chair, I guess, technically, for the Oakmont Democratic Club. And we're getting kind of tired of evacuations. fall a year ago, we were out of here again. And the whole state is burning up again. In Louisiana, people are just beside themselves. And New York City, we used to live in New York City. It's unrecognizable during the flooding. I just want to say that if it comes down to staff time and cost, I'm not sure why either of those things come into play when we're looking at the precedent in Petaluma for saying no to new gas stations. We could reach out to them. They've done a lot of the work. The staff time should make this a priority. It doesn't seem to me that it would be a long, drawn out thing. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tom and Chris. We'll go to Michael.
Yeah, can you hear me?
There you go.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thanks for reconvening. I just want to remind everybody that it's been almost a year since you all have signed on to the climate emergency resolution. And the last I checked, emergency requires immediate action. And I know there are a lot of nuances to what we're talking about, but the urgency is in our face. Actually, the current climate scientists are not looking at 2030 and carbon neutral, they're looking at carbon negative. And that means carbon neutral plus drawdown out of the atmosphere. So we have to get creative and use what nature has taught us. One example is regenerative agriculture to sequester carbon, planting trees, greening spaces, removing some parking lots and greening those, making 15-minute indwellings where all your shopping, banking needs are within 15 minutes of cycling or walking. And I think the county public health department has done really well with adaptation information for its citizens in the county, but it's solely remiss in educating our public regarding simple climate actions, listing some simple things that we can do that each in their small and simple way have a huge effect on climate action. And in so doing and being active, I know I speak for myself and many other climate activists, once you take a little action, it really helps mitigate our fear and despair about what's going on and the future we're leaving our children and grandchildren. And just lastly, I think it's a no-brainer to not permit more gas stations. If we have a climate emergency going on, this is just a very simple choice. And as already has been reiterated by Eris and Steve, we need to really scale up our active transportation sector, cycling, pedestrians, et cetera. And that requires investment in infrastructure that is safe with separated bike paths so people aren't competing with traffic. And I really thank you for listening. And a lot of us in the climate community are just really getting tired and burnt seeing the same things repeat over and over again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. So I'll go ahead. That's the last hand that I see. I'll go ahead and bring it back to the committee. So Amy, there were two questions in particular that I was hoping you could jump in on. I know that neither is entirely 100% within your wheelhouse. One of them is about the timing for the gas station ban. The other is about who has responsibility for monitoring the climate action plan from 2012. And obviously that's a fairly complicated question, but if you wanted to take a stab at the two of those, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. So we've been a part of this subcommittee for a while and have heard the concerns and opinions expressed about gas stations and have been watching and working with the other jurisdictions within the county. And as you know, a couple meetings ago, we did have a focused discussion on the gas station ban and have been working behind the scenes to formulate a plan to move that forward. And Amy Nicholson is our project lead on that. And I will say that anytime we undergo considering a new ordinance or a piece of policy, it's really important that we make sure we have the capacity to do it correctly. So it does take capacity from our team to be able to accomplish something with the right amount of outreach and thoughtfulness when it comes to policies that will work best within our city and for the constituents and for everyone involved. So with that being said, we did assess our workload and our capacity, and we do have a fair number of things on our plate which are related to climate action, many of which are grant funded with specific timelines associated. So it is something that we brought forward to the council during the council goal setting, I believe that was just a few weeks ago, to look at how we prioritize the various things that our team are currently working on and just how do we move forward. And that's going to be an ongoing conversation as we start completing some of the things that are on our plate. And when we did have that conversation at the council, we did hear that over the next 6 months, our focus should remain on the general plan, streamlining housing, and working on short-term rental policy initiative, which is new to our plate as well. So all of those things combined really means we weren't able to pivot as quickly as I know the community wants to work on that gas station ban. But we are going to be watching the issue very closely and hopefully have capacity to work on that in the near future. But we'll continue to also monitor the permit activity related to gas stations in the city. We haven't had new applications in quite a while. We do have one application that's under review right now that we know of, but that is another piece that we'll continue to monitor, and we'll continue to work with those on the call today to do what we can, knowing the capacity that we have at this time.
All right, I appreciate that. And just for folks, because I've seen a couple of folks and I've gotten a couple of emails from folks about wanting this particular issue to come faster. Here is what we're working on, and you tell me if you'd like us to push any of these off for the gas station ban. There's the implementation for the foodware and litter reduction ordinance. That's the zero waste ordinance that was passed. There's the implementation of that, as well as the composting requirements for the state that we have to do. There's the Eco Pass and free public transit that's being worked on. There's the Rosa Creek Community Park that's being worked on. There is the TIES, that's the transit integration activity that we're working on. There's the bus electrification fleet that we have coming later this year. We can push that off if folks want us to push that off for this. There's the there's a couple of grant applications for different electrification for other vehicles. Happy to talk about that. There's the shared mobility ordinance that's being worked on. Mandatory composting that's in compliance with some of those rules. Again, if folks want to contact us and tell us to prioritize the gas ban over these things, there's the new vehicle purchasing policy around electrification that's coming, and that applies across the board. I'm just looking, there's the climate action bicycle update that staff has been working on, our bicycle and pedestrian master plans. We're happy to have this conversation. We know that this is important to folks, but we also know that things like electrifying our bus fleet are also important, and we have limited staff. So it's moving forward. It's set to come early next year. If folks really are interested in having that pushed ahead of some of these things that I've mentioned, let's have a conversation about it. We didn't hear from folks during the goal setting that the next couple of months were more urgent than next year, given the proposal of a couple of no new proposals coming in for a while. happy to have the conversation about it. But let's have that conversation. Vice Mayor, Council Member, any final thoughts on this item?
I just want to say I am not happy to have the conversation because I think they are all good things. I think that they all need to be done, and it is just so difficult to prioritize them. For me, I'll say for me, it's difficult to prioritize them because I think that they all need to be done, and I wish we had staff time and resources to do them all at the same time. And it was pretty difficult to I guess, to prioritize them. And I didn't really hear a lot from people when we were going through the goal settings. I don't think I really heard from anyone when we went through the goal settings again. So, and it doesn't mean that we don't think it's a great idea or we support it. It just means that we couldn't get to it this time. So I feel bad because it is something that I support and that I do want to get to. I just know that we can't get to everything at one time, and we want our staff to dedicate their time to do some things well instead of trying to do multiple things or everything and not be able to do them 100% and do them well. Is one of the things that I was looking at when we were trying to have our staff kind of hone in on what they were able to prioritize.
And to be clear, it's still coming. It was just delayed a couple of months. Councilmember Alvarez.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. For myself, I think I have more of a question, and that question would be, out of all the gas stations that have a permit submitted as of now, have any of those permits moved forward in the last 6 months?
Amy shaking her head no. I only know of one application in process, and I don't believe anything has happened of substance in the last 6 months with that application.
Thank you for that. And with that being said, I find it, and I would like to echo Vice Mayor Rogers' statement that I would not like to have the conversation if we're going to prioritize other issues in front of that one, especially if we're not seeing any or any project move forward within the last 6 months. I think that there's plenty to do, and I think we're moving forward. I know that it's very frustrating at the speed that things must move forward at, but I am confident with the statement of making that says that the city of Santa Rosa is moving forward with the climate action plan, and I think we're doing well with it. And I would actually hate to see us fall off track with that, because we want to discuss something that we're not seeing as relevant or as really vital, such as the bus electrification project, which I really want to see come to fruition.
All right, thank you, Councilmember. We'll go ahead, we'll move on to the next item. That's our subcommittee reports. I don't have any report. We'll see if any other council members do, and then we'll take public comment on that. And I'm sure we'll also get a couple of comments about whether people would like to change the priority order, because I see a couple of hands that have popped up. Vice Mayor, council member, any additional reports?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll go to public comment on it. We'll start with Alexa, and then we'll go to Woody.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep. Go ahead, Alexa.
So I appreciate some of the backstory because I am a supporter of the gas station ban. And I have been under the impression that one of the benefits of doing that is that it will save staff time in the long run. If you get a gas station permit application tomorrow, that's staff time that has to get dedicated to that. And so by just implementing the ban, you're saying we're not going to spend any more staff time on that. And so I can't see Amy anymore, but I was, I guess I would just ask you to elaborate on what the staff need to do, given that Petaluma already has the ban in place and the RCPA has already endorsed the idea, and that's coming up next week. Like, it seems like low-hanging fruit. It seems like one of the least time-consuming, certainly much simpler than electrifying the bus fleet. And then once that permit ban is in place, it seems like that's going to keep staff from having to spend time processing permits that for gas stations that shouldn't be built. And to respond to Councilmember Alvarez's question, which I think is a legitimate reason, one of the reasons that those aren't moving forward is because we citizens are watching them like hawks and sending them letters, and like, we're on it and we're devoting our very precious time to trying to stop it. And we would like to take that time, reclaim that time, and spend it on different fights. So that would be a help to us as citizens. If you could just make it that those battles don't have to be fought anymore, let's move on to the next stage. So that's why I think it deserves a high prioritization. I want to thank you profusely for all the other things you are doing as well. Thanks.
Of course. Thank you, Alexa. We'll go to Woody, followed by Eris.
I hadn't, okay. Thank you. Woody Hastings, Coalition Opposing Gas Stations. Yeah, I want to thank Alexa for reminding me. So there are 2 live active gas station applications, permit processes underway in Santa Rosa. One is at 43 Middle Rincon Road on the east side of town. The other one is at 874 North Wright Road on the west side of town. And that one is on hold, in part because the Coalition Opposing New Gas Stations filed an appeal on their subdivision subcommittee approval of that station, and it's been on hold since then. And that was December of 2019. So it is our activities that have been keeping these things at bay. You know, and it's a really good point that Alexa also raises about saving staff time. You know, this is, if you want to, you know, part of prioritization is figuring out what's the easy, quick stuff you can get done and get out of the way, get it off the plate. This is one of them. We believe that this is not going to be something that takes a lot of staff time. So again, you know, I just want to say that if you want to prioritize things that can be done relatively quickly and easily without an enormous amount of staff time, this is one of them. And so I would urge you to get it done this year. Thank you.
Thanks, Woody. Eris?
Oh, I used to have aspirations to public office, and I am so glad now that I lost the one and only election I was ever in for, because I would hate to have to be in the position of having to prioritize so many worthy actions all toward the same goal. And of course, the Congas group see their issue as the most high priority. And of course, I see getting more people on bikes as the highest priority. And, you know, there are multiple high priorities out there. And while I overall support my friends and colleagues, Jenny and Woody, in that endeavor, I'm not sure that I always think that doing the easy, low-hanging fruit first is actually, it's not how I choose what to do first always, because what I always want to look at is what's going to have the biggest result. What is going to get people out of their cars, what's going to get other stuff done. And in the long list of things we could be doing, while I agree we do not need more gas stations, and I don't want to see any more gone, I don't think that stopping this 1 or 2 permits of gas stations is going to change a whole lot of people's transportation behavior, frankly. Right? Making more bike paths where people can ride a bike where they don't feel like they're going to get run over by a car is going to entice some people to get out of the car and ride their bike, at least on destinations that have that kind of infrastructure, and that's expensive and takes time to build. So whereas, again, I agree with and am sympathetic towards that ordinance, it would not be on the top list of my priorities. But again, I know you all as a committee and as a council have to balance a lot of priorities. And so I guess I'll just leave it there. Thanks.
Thanks, Eris. We'll go to Jenny, followed by Michael. Jenny, you able to unmute?
I did unmute. Can you hear me?
There you are.
Okay, yeah, I started twice. Okay. I certainly want to see people get out of their cars, walking and bicycling, and I totally support those efforts as well. This is just, as Woody said earlier, about not digging the hole deeper that we're already in. But I wanted to make a new point, which is that we did also, Coalition of Opposing New Gas Stations did supply the staff with a model ordinance. It is more straightforward than the one that Petaluma passed, which I think got a little bit more complicated. And we also submitted policy points. So a lot of the work, at least the initial work, is provided if it can be used by staff to tweak to make it appropriate for Santa Rosa. And the other thing is, this isn't just about, stopping 1 or 2 gas stations. It's about saying no more new gas stations. And we're hoping this will be countywide pretty soon. So, and that would just be another way to stop prolonging dependency on fossil fuels into the future. But I totally support all the other things that are happening as well. And thank you for your work on the other issues. I would also not like to have to be prioritizing which comes first or which is most important. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. We'll go to Michael, followed by Tom and Chris.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, okay, thanks. I concur with all the comments made by Alexa and Woody and Jenny. I think the stepping back, I think all your decisions have to be made through the lens of climate change. And I think you're attempting to do that. Hence, prioritization is a very difficult thing. However, there's more to it than just banning more gas stations. Once you do that, you create a public perception that we will not allow any more gas stations that support the fossil fuel industry. And it also is a deterrent to these corporate entities that want to come into our county and apply for permits, slow down all our other priorities in climate change, use up staff time. I think we really need to recognize that it's just bigger than not allowing more gas stations. It's a deterrent and it's public perception. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Tom and Chris?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, there you are.
Yeah, thank you. It occurs to me that this problem, this climate change problem, is probably gonna be bigger than we even think now. As time goes forward, I think it will become more and more acute. I think the entire city council needs to revisit its budget priorities with the climate lens in place to see where you all and how the public can help you, either by raising taxes or getting people who are environmental offenders, individuals or corporations, to pay more of the cost of what has happened, not going forward, it's not a cap and trade thing. It's, they need to be paying their fair share. And I'd like to see a bigger staff to handle this bigger problem that we're going to be facing. And if that means bigger amounts of money, then we better come up with it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. So that's the last hand that I see, so I'll pull it back. And I really do appreciate everybody being willing to sort of engage us on this conversation. I'll tell you, it's not easy picking and choosing which things to prioritize. And I'll say this about our staff, and I hope they don't mind me saying it, but they're exhausted. And I think we all recognize that they're exhausted because of climate change, because of emergencies that were worse and are more frequent because of climate change. And they know that we need to address that and do our fair share. At the same time, we asked them for an honest assessment of what they thought that they could deliver given our staff capacities. And that's what they gave to us. And what we heard from our staff was that they really wanted to focus on the things where they were going to get the best bang for their buck. And again, remember that our staff members live in Santa Rosa. They believe in addressing climate change. They want it to be a priority. They want to move things as fast as they can. And we want to make sure that we're communicating with the public and hearing from you all what you want to accomplish first and foremost. But some of these things like electrification of public transit, those are priorities that we started last year or the year before, and we're starting to see it come to fruition, which does end up having additional staff time to it. We want to make sure that we get them across the finish line. So it will be a constant push-pull. I appreciate hearing from folks about what they'd like to see prioritized over others. Yes, we will be looking at the broader impact to see what we can move both quickly and also that is going to move the needle the most on climate. And so we'll continue to have this conversation. As it's set right now, that issue will come back to us with the full language, and I can actually talk to staff about preparing it and see if we can skip a step of not having to come back to our committee, if that's a good middle point to try to help out. And we'll get it done as soon as we can is the answer. In the meantime, like I said, I know our staff is exhausted and they're working hard. And so I just wanted to appreciate them for that. We'll go on to the last item for today. It's our department reports from staff. Let's see if there's anything additional that staff wants to add from today's meeting before we adjourn.
Thank you, Mayor and Vice Mayor and Council Member. I just have a few quick updates. One, I wanted to follow up on our climate action plan monitoring. So we do this in a number of ways. One is through our annual review of the general plan. So this is a report that comes out on a yearly basis and has a section on our climate action plan and describes the progress that was made for each of those goals and policies. We also have these spreadsheets, which include all of the action items in the CAP, and then that's circulated to various staff members to plug in any sort of updates. And then we do coordinate with our CPA on just kind of broader efforts, and they also are evaluating our GHG inventory every few years. And so they're looking at the effectiveness of some of the work that we're doing on a more macro level. Just a quick highlight, we had a climate adaptation workshop earlier this year, and that report was released this week. So this was a community and staff workshop that resulted in some specific adaptation measures. And this document will be used as a resource in our general plan update. And the consultant actually spoke about this briefly during her presentation. This report will be posted to our Climate Action Subcommittee webpage, and the report was also emailed to all the workshop participants. And finally, I just wanted to note that we are anticipating more items to come before the subcommittee in the coming months. We've actually previously discussed sort of an upcoming meetings list or pending items with the subcommittee before, so we're working on getting that pulled together so that everyone can be more informed as to what we are working on. And that is it for me. I don't know if there are any other staff that have an update. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Amy. Vice Mayor, Council Member, any questions for staff?
No, sir.
No.
Great. We'll go to public comment then. Folks are interested in talking on item 7. Go ahead and hit the raise hand feature. Okay, I'm not seeing any. So that, Eris, you got it in just under the wire. Let's go ahead and go to public comment with Eris.
Okay, just a quick question to the follow-up of where to find this annual update or report that indicates that thing, you know, what goals have been met, because I am noodling around on the website, which is extremely hard to sometimes to find the documents that you want. So I can take that offline if any of you can email me where on the website those things are. Thanks.
Thank you, Eris. We'll see if we can get Amy to answer that. But it's not just you. I have never found our website to be particularly easy to navigate. I know we've been working on it. Amy?
I want to clarify exactly what documents would be helpful. So was it just the annual report?
That's what it sounded like.
Okay, perfect. Yes, that's on the general plan section of our webpage, and it is confusing to organize information in an intuitive manner. So I'm happy to send those to you by email, Eris. I do have your email.
Okay. Thank you so much, Amy. Any last thoughts, Vice Mayor or Councilmember Alvarez, before we adjourn? All right, seeing none, we will go ahead and adjourn. See you all at our council meeting on Tuesday.
Thank you. See you soon.